If ever there were a better example of how money and fame can twist your principles into knots, look no further than CNN's Van Jones, who's been jumping on bandwagons since the Young Turks were just baby Turks.
A wise guy, eh?
Salutations, fellow nerds. Today is June 25th, 2025. There was a time I genuinely enjoyed Van Jones. He was a fresh, passionate voice who actually seemed to believe in the causes that he stood for. But then in 2016, it happened. I watched him cry, literally cry on live television while declaring that Donald Trump had finally become presidential. That moment was February 28th, 2017. Trump had just wrapped up his first address to a joint session of Congress. The speech was typical Trump boilerplate, except for one thing. Trump honored the widow of a Navy SEAL, William Ryan Owens, who was killed in a botched raid in Yemen just days into his presidency. Trump had said, "Ryan died as he lived, a warrior and a hero. Ryan's legacy is etched into eternity." He pointed to Owens' widow, Karen Owens, seated in the audience, sobbing. The chamber gave her a prolonged standing ovation. And through his own tears, Van Jones said, and I quote, "He became president of the United States in that moment." Really? Because I'm sure most people don't even remember the raid itself. And there's a good reason for that. You see that raid? It was poorly planned, flimsy intelligence, no high-value targets were eliminated, multiple civilian casualties, including children, and all of it authorized over dinner, not the Situation Room. When the mission went sideways, Trump didn't take responsibility. No, he blamed the military. And now, in 2025, he's doing the same thing again, whining that people are being too mean to the pilots after his airstrikes on Iran flopped. No one's blaming the pilots, Donald. We're blaming you. Everyone in that mission had done exactly as expected, except the one person who was supposed to be the leader in the entire ordeal. And let's be honest, this is one of the GOP's classic hits. Wrap yourself in the flag, use the troops as props, and then screw them over the moment that the power is secured. We can't afford social programs until every veteran is off the street. But then the moment they win the election, helping everyone off the street is suddenly socialism. Funny how that works. So what did Van Jones step in this time? He said, and I quote, "Iran isn't a normal country. They blind women for showing hair." Now, I'm not going to continue going on to what he said, but I will definitely summarize how I feel about it. Because he's right. That is horrific, but is that our new standard for airstrikes now? Because if so, what about Saudi Arabia? Why did Trump invite the Taliban to Camp David just days before the anniversary of 9/11? Too far? Okay, let's bring it home. Anyone remember the 1990s? Black youth were being targeted and demonized, and the term was born. Super predators. It was coined by John DeLulio in 1995, and it described radically impulsive, brutally remorseless youngsters who murder, assault, grape, rob, and do so without giving it a second thought. And who became the face of this? Black and brown kids, criminalized by politicians, cheered on by cable news. And back then, Van Jones was on the right side of history with that fight. He said things like, "Don't use isolated crime to justify mass incarceration. Black youth aren't monsters, the system is failing them. Dehumanization is the first step to oppression." But now he's using exactly that logic to justify a military strike because another country's regime is oppressive. When it was his community being scapegoated, he grabbed a bullhorn and he marched. Now that it's Iranians who just so happen to be Muslim, he grabs a mic and says, "Yeah, they had it coming." So let's not forget something. In 2015 and 2016, Van Jones was calling Trump's rhetoric, quote, textbook racism. He blasted him for refusing to denounce the KKK. He called Trump's presidency a white lash. By late 2016, Van Jones was already warning of an authoritarian kleptocracy modeled after Russia, where Trump would enrich himself and shred democratic norms. racist, authoritarian, kleptocrat. His words. And now, that same racist authoritarian is using the same tired playbook. And Van Jones is co-signing on it. He's not calling it out. No warning the people. He's cheerleading the narrative. So let me be clear. Democratic shills can be just as inconsistent, clout-thirsty, and hypocritical as Republicans. Van Jones, Jake Tapper, even parts of the TYT these days. Everybody's chasing influence instead of their own integrity. I don't know if it's about money or fame or ego or if this is who they just always really were. But I see a growing apathy, even in progressive spaces where nuance is traded for sound bites and moral clarity is replaced by tribal loyalty. Times like these remind me of another quote by Gandalf.
Many that live deserve death, and some that die deserve life. Can you give it to them, Frodo? Do not be too eager to deal out death and judgment. Even the very wise can assume ends.
So wise. Anyways, if you dig the content, like, comment, and share, and as always, y'all come back now. You hear?